Welcome to the Black Knight Nation podcast. I'm your host, Sal Interdonato. The Black Knight Nation podcast is sponsored by Higher Echelon. Higher Echelon is a company run by Joe Ross. He's a former Army fullback. He's a former Army assistant coach and former Army officer. And we thank Higher Echelon for getting on board for a second year on the Black Knight Nation podcast as a sponsor. Much appreciated. Guys, if you're watching this podcast right now, you can check us out on our YouTube channel, Black Knight Nation. You can subscribe, like the videos. We just had on Gavin Lawrence, who was a 1990s offensive lineman, and Joel Davis on last week. There's a bunch in the archives, including John Voight. Please check us out at our website, blackknightnation.com. Steve Anderson, co-host. We're welcoming back Steve. Thanks, Steve. Good to have you back, man.
Yeah, Sal, good to be back, and got an Army football brother right here that I got to play with and meet. So, Chris, thanks for coming on tonight, and I look forward to the show, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I'm honored to be here.
Yeah, Chris Nichols here, who former Army fullback, as an Army prep coach, assistant coach too. So, Chris, thanks for coming on. And we usually start the podcast off with your story on how you got to West Point, your path to West Point. So maybe you can tell us your story of how you got to the academy.
Sure. I from Wolfville, Maryland originally, went to Middletown High School down there. Kind of started going down the academy route, just looking at him because my uncle was in the Marines. He was enlisted Marine, growing up. As I was growing up, he would say to me, like, hey, as you're getting closer to college, you should really look at the academies. And, obviously as a Marine, he pushed me towards the Naval Academy, which, being in Maryland, that's kind of what got me peaked on the academy. So started, looking there, and then as time went on, ended up, Army had the things that I came on a visit up here. Really touched home with me being here and just kind of being around the culture here. And then it had football, it had engineering, which I wanted to get into. And then, the Army just seemed, I've always been kind of an outdoors guy, and, athletics have always been a big part of my life. So it seemed like a natural fit. So that's kind of how I wound up here.
Yeah, Chris, me and Chris go way back to high school, played high school football against each other, and he's actually one of the first people I met, re-met, I guess, when I went up on my visit. But that was the same kind of deal with me. I was so nervous about being stuck on a boat that I just could not, I couldn't even see myself even going to the Naval Academy if it was just if it was even a possibility, like, hey, you're going to be on a boat for 8 months, I was just like, oh my God, that's not me, I'm an outdoors guy. But yeah, no, that's pretty cool. Chris, can you talk a little bit about what positions you played in high school and how you fit under, who your recruiting coach was and how that whole process went down as far as, going prep, going direct, any kind of those conversations, and then, where you kind of felt the culture was where the culture was at when you first got there?
Sure. Yeah. Well, in high school, I was primarily a linebacker, played a little bit of, tight end, kind of bounced me around as they needed on offense, but primarily inside, middle linebacker. When it came to colleges, Army didn't recruit me. So ironically, I was recruited a little bit at Navy by one coach, Jeff Munkin, back in 2004 or 2003, I guess it was. Obviously ended up that didn't work out there. Ended up coming here, getting in without being recruited, and ended up walking on here at the academy. So yeah, it's small world. Everything comes full circle.
It's pretty cool. You can always tell Coach Munkin, he can't go recruiting because he couldn't seal the deal back in 2004. That's cool, man. So when you got to the academy and you walked on, I know you go through during Beast, you start doing sports days or whatever, a week or two in. You go to walk on. What was that experience like? Did you know anybody else from the area, or did you have any kind of expectations as far as when you walked on, what to expect when you came into the weight room and met the coaches for the first time?
So yeah, they did the Beast Walkon Tryouts that year, and they didn't keep me. I don't think they kept anybody there. The only thing I remember was, they did, we ran the 40 and pro agility and stuff, and it was a brand new field, so everybody's slow as you could ever be.
Oh, that's the most important thing on a football field is the 40 and the pro agility, right? You can't play unless you have you're good at
Right.
that.
So they didn't keep me then. So I did, intramurals that fall as a plebe, and then went back, still, lifted and trained. And my goal was to try again. So at some point that winter of plebe year, walked into the stadium with, I guess we had CDs back then for recruiting tapes. I think we were just past the VHSs, and handed that in, said, "Hey, this is me. I'm interested in, walking on if you guys will have me." And got an email back a few days later saying, "Hey, yeah, we'd love to have you up for, essentially spring ball tryout." And, the rest is history from there. So went up, started working out with the team, did spring ball. And then, I guess they liked me enough, because then, they never kicked me out after that.
I remember, you said you had a lot of linebacker and tight end tape, but, by the time I got there, you were on the offensive side of the ball playing fullback. So where did that, that's a position you didn't really play a lot. So how is that on your psyche of going to fullback versus linebacker? It's literally the same position, just opposite sides of the ball, right? Same mentality, right?
Yep.
But how did that go for you?
It was fun. It was good. I did a little bit of fullback stuff in high school, so I was, not unfamiliar with it. And it was in that email, that first, like, "Hey, we want to bring you up." It was as a fullback. So we said, "Hey," I remember the email. I think it was one of the interns one of the GAs at the time sent it, said, "Hey, we want to bring you up, give you a tryout as a fullback." And so that's what they did. So it was pretty natural. Like you said, it's inside linebacker and fullback are the mirror of each other on offense.
What was what were you able? Do you remember your height and weight when you tried out? Because I know that freshman year, especially going intramurals, you probably went in, pretty well put together, and that beast will take 30 pounds off you easily.
Sure. By that point, I've always been 5'10" and change. The program might say 5'11", but if we're being honest, it's a solid 5'10". I was probably 220.
I was 6'1" in high school, Chris. All right.
Exactly. Yep. Same. Yeah, and I was probably about somewhere between 215, 220 around that time. But by the time I walked on there, so not too far undersized, but a little bit behind everybody else, but enough that they at least were interested in hanging on to me for a little bit.
Yeah, we hear a lot. Actually, I used to hear a lot about those walk-on tryouts, right? And like that, getting the chance in the spring just to see. And there's some guys that have stuck in those walk-on tryouts. This midseason was John Abercrombie, the kicker, who really helped out. He came right from the sprint football team, and he was earned a starting kicking job by his senior year, and was really solid too. So they give you a number, right? You get a lock or two, I'm guessing, during tryouts too. I'm guessing, right?
Well, by that point, I'm trying to think back now. During the Beast tryouts, or that summer, it was a one-off. We might have been, I don't remember, but there wasn't it. It was come up, work out in PTs, and then see you later. When I came back on later, that was more of an individual thing. I'm not sure they were bringing on anybody. I don't think there was a formal tryout. That was just me walking up, handing them a tape and saying, "Hey, I'm around here. I've been working out. If you guys, would take me." And I guess they liked that film enough that I worked out with the team probably a week or two before spring ball started, and then did spring ball, and then, like I said, from there,
Is it like each day you have to like kind of what's the word I'm trying to say? Not verify, but earn your spot, so to speak. Do you feel like it, Chris, was? Because sometimes you see guys are on the roster in the spring, and they're this is different regime at Monken, but they're cuts after spring, and then here comes the freshman class, about 75 freshman class guys looking to earn a spot too. So did it feel like you had to earn your way daily, or now?
As an athlete, for sure, around the other players and the guys who were they're already on the team, for sure you feel that, but there was, as I recall, not a formal once they said come up and try it and come up for spring ball and start working out and doing all that, I was on the team from there on out. Nobody ever came back and said, "Hey, we're going to keep you," or "We like this or not." That's just kind of I went on from there. So it wasn't at least back then, it wasn't that codified as to how they did it. At least for me, it wasn't. Maybe for other people, it wasn't. I can't speak to that.
Chris, who were some of the leaders at the time that kind of took you under the wing, or how were you received when you came to spring ball? I think that's a very interesting kind of dynamic that you got to go through, because you weren't on anybody's roster, you weren't on any depth chart, and then one day this name just shows up, and you're like, oh yeah, I've been here for a year. I'm on the team now. So I find that kind of interesting on how the fullback / running back room received that, and then who are your mentors, or who are the upperclassmen that took care of you.
Yeah, that is, it's interesting. Everybody adjusted to it well. I mean, it's West Point. You adjust to weird things all the time, and all of a sudden this was the thing, and everybody kind of goes with it. I know, Mike Vitti took me under his wing a bit and said, help me out with some of the playbook stuff, and the older guys in the room, Carlton Jones, Ricky Lay, Scott Wesley, everybody, well, open arms. There was never any like, oh, who's this walk-on kid? It was just, we all just kind of kept working from there. And then, you start, you're doing, you're lifting, doing your lifts and your runs. And, they kind of, I remember, I think it was Ricky and RJ Bayless, I think, kind of like, what the definition of finishing through the line changes in college. And once you learn that, you kind of had your groups, and, they kind of, helped me along there. Just, this is pushing you past what you think finishing is, if that makes sense. Like, you think you're pushing yourself, but there's a next level, and guys like that kind of help you get along to the next level there. Carlton Jones being one of those leaders in that room too.
During that time, Chris, the fullback was used a little bit differently than it's used now, right?
Very differently.
Yeah, it was a Bobby Ross's Prostyle offense, right?
It was. I think we had one play where the fullback got the ball. Now I think we have one play where the fullback doesn't get the ball.
Yeah, my older brother actually signed with Vanderbilt out of high school as a fullback, as a traditional pro style fullback, and he spent 1 year at fullback in Vanderbilt, and he was like, "I'm done blocking SEC linebackers. Like, screw this." And he transferred to go be a linebacker up in UMass, but very, very, he went from Frederick County. Fullbacks, running backs, we all, basically got the ball, halves and halves or whatever. And that was the type of fullback he was used to. But I'll never forget that quote. He just said, "I got tired of blocking SEC linebackers and not getting the ball." So he went to go play linebacker at UMass, and ended up going to a national championship game. But that was one of the funniest quotes, pro style fullback, I got to hear.
Yep. Yeah. A lot of ISO blocks. A lot of fullback dives without the ball.
So. Yeah. Kicking out the 260-pound ends,
Yep.
or ISO blocking the 240-pound linebackers. Oh yeah.
Yep.
What do you think?
Go
ahead, Steve. No, I'm good. You're good.
I was just on that note when, so on that note, you go through that spring, you go through that season, and now all of a sudden you're an upperclassman, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of had a shortened underclassman period, and now, you're, as at least when I got there, it was like the sophomore and junior class were, especially that spring, were really responsible for making sure that the plebes or the freshmen got on board, like understood, the mentality, whether it was the shinebacker mentality in the linebacker room or whatever what do the running backs call themselves?
Headbangers.
What is it?
Headbangers.
Headbangers. Yeah, I remember headbangers. That's right. But like, it's just not right. We didn't just come up with these names. There's always a rhyme and reason behind it, and what it meant to be an Army football linebacker, an Army football running back, fullback, whatever. So, what kind of role did you see, or were you able to do when, guys started looking to you for help with the playbook and what they can do to be better?
Yeah, just be on top of your stuff to begin with. That way you can help them. But for the most part, it's when you're in camp, get the right place, right time. Make sure that your position group isn't the one holding everybody up, and having guys late for meetings and all that. So that's that doesn't take a whole lot of football X's and O's just to to get that on young guys. But then, after that, you help them as needed. It was, it's also pretty easy to keep the room going in the right direction when you got a guy like, Mike Vitti leading your position, that it makes, pretty much everybody else's job easy, keeping those younger guys in line. But yeah, we had good groups all through the years. I never really thought that was too much of a challenge. Everybody kind of, everybody saw what we were doing and, came along with us.
Yeah, I always noticed when that role started, when I became a junior and try to help the freshmen out, or it was really just, the whole mindset of like leaving what had happened previous, or whatever's happened previous at the day down at the core, and focusing on football. That was where I felt, like you said, you had a military school, right? Be where you're supposed to be, what you're supposed to be wearing, with what you need becomes pretty, natural to most of these guys. But the mentality portion of how you approach the game is where I thought I helped the most underclassmen as an upperclassman, as far as, hey, this is how your mind needs to be. This is what you need to be thinking about during warm-ups. This is what you need to be taking notes on during film, that kind of stuff, versus the actual, like, helping them with X's and O's and stuff like that and where they need to be.
Right. And that's what and especially I see it now as a coach too. But you look back then, and I remember it as a player, and it's funny to see now on this end of it, that what coming out of high school, what you think hard work is, and what you think, whether it's studying the playbook or, when you're lifting or at practice, film session, whatever that is, it's whatever. You could be the hardest worker in high school and you're not. That's it. Rarely are you going to walk in a position room and be the hardest worker there. There's just another level, and you could legitimately be a very hard worker in high school. Like I'm not doubting anybody's definition of hard work, but it just changes when you get to the college level, and those things mean it, has a little bit of different meaning to it. There's another depth to it that honestly high schoolers shouldn't probably know, but that you kind of uncover, and that's kind of the upperclassman's role to help those guys stay in line and guide them into that next level of focus. Is really what it is, focus and consistency, to succeed at the next level.
Yeah, especially when you mentioned hard work, in high school, at least from, we have a pretty, Damascus has a pretty successful high school program in Maryland. And you think of hard work, right? And usually that means on the field or in the weight room, right? And then you get to the next level in college, and there's 3 or 4 other layers of hard work that go into being ready to play on Saturdays, right? It's not just, you can't just dominate the weight room and dominate the playing field and think you're going to be ready on Saturdays, because you got to dominate the tendencies. You got to dominate the film work of like what your opponent's doing. And when you said you're the hardest worker in high school and you can't, it's almost impossible to be the hardest worker at college because you just don't know how to work hard at that next level yet. So I just, when you said that, that was the first thing that came to my mind.
Sure.
And like you guys said, when you have guys who are leading the team in the position room, like a Mike Vitti, and guys, sure that's around Jeremy Tremble's time too. And you see those guys, the way they lead and the way, they see the game differently, right? They see the game a little bit differently. And that's certainly some things that you can certainly have picked up on. I'm imagining, Chris, during your time, right? Just those little things. And now you see him as a coach, and now it's like, it's got to be pretty special to see that, from what you saw your playing days, and now you're leading, young Army football players who are going to come up to the big team, and there's a certain vision that you have that you're, also providing them, getting them into their, your vision, their vision, so to speak. So
sure. Yeah, that's one of the it is the most rewarding thing as a coach, when you see that light bulb start to click with the guys and you see them realize, whether it's when you see that confidence come into their eyes of like, oh, when they get it and have whether it's weight room or on the field, and when you see that light bulb click and kind of like, oh, I get it now, or I just did something I've never done before, that a year ago they never thought might be possible, is pretty awesome. Yeah,
maybe we could wrap up as far as your playing career at West Point and get into to after West Point. What do you think? What's a memory that you'll always you'll never forget about being on the Army football team?
I mean, the first one that comes to mind is, you know, Mikey Miracle. That's the in terms of when it comes to games, that one. Honestly, the first thing that came to mind was just being with the guys, the team, the players, and the first thing when you said that was the meeting room, and you know, the guys that are still my best friends today, Mike, Colin, Rankowitz, you know, all those guys. You know, we're still, you know, like I said, we're still best friends today. Just being with them year in and day out, year in and year out. It's funny, Steve, you know, it was one of the first things when I came in as a walk-on. Dave Galbraith was one of the first guys that I saw in the locker room. And I was like, wait, I remember you, another Maryland guy, because we went to a camp together. We met back then. And, you know, fast forward 2 years later, there we are in the locker room. You know, and we're in each other's weddings with, you know, a number of those guys. That was the case. You know, you just the time you spend with those guys, whether it be in the meeting rooms, in the weight room, on the field, in the locker room, at Buckner, at you studying, things like that. That's the most rewarding thing, and the relationships is really the big, you know, that's the overlying thing in terms of moments that stand out. Obviously, you know, you go to Mikey Miracle and stuff like that. Unfortunately watching, you know, Reggie Bush run by us a million times, that comes up there too. But yeah. So, but yeah, like I said, the relationships are the thing that stands out the most.
Yeah, I put the Mikey Miracle. That was my first year covering the team, and I was like, that game was one of my top games I've ever seen at West Point at Mikey Stadium. That game was crazy. Kevin Dunn, you know, coming off the bench basically. You know, Mike Wright. We've talked about it before, but to be on the field for that game must have been incredible because it was, you know, it didn't look like it was going to turn out to be a happy night, you know. And then one guy, one play can kind of get it going, right? And then. Then by the end of the night, you're celebrating, and you know you think against a pretty, you know, Tulane team that had some solid players on it too.
It's Matt Forte, yeah, that was another one. I remember standing on the sideline watching Forte run by, and then you know, game you know, unfolded as it did. That's pretty crazy. Yeah. We still have that actually in the prep school locker room. We have a printout of a bunch of photos from that game.
Wow.
And it shows the, you know, the end zone shot of Mike's catch going out the back and all that stuff. And then the celebrations after, that's still hanging down there.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. So after West football career is over at West Point, then it's time to, you know, fulfill the
military side of it. And maybe you could talk a little bit about, you know, what that was like for you. Yeah, so I branched engineers, went posted Fort Stewart, so went to a combat engineer unit. So graduated, went to engineer. Well, we had Bullock. It was called Bullock 2 back then. So I went to Fort Sill for that, and then went to engineer Bullock basic officer leader course out at Fort Leonard Wood, and then went to Ranger School after that, then airborne school. Then I showed up at 3rd Infantry Division down at Fort Stewart. Within a couple weeks, took a platoon, and yeah, the former PL was leaving, going to Alaska, if I recall. So I got platoon there. Then we went right into the field training after that. We had gunnery, and then what was it called? Raider Focus. Gunnery, Raider Focus, NTC. So we were training. Then we deployed in December 2009, and you know, as a platoon leader. So that's the quick, you know.
Chris, what unit was it that you went to be a PL at?
Echo. It was back then. It was Echo Company 369 Armor in 1st Brigade. Yeah.
Yep.
So they're in BSDB now, but we were in 369 back then.
Yeah. Yeah. I was in 164 Armor as a PL. So down there at the Rock of the Marne, trying to go back there as a field grade, hopefully in the next couple of years. So, but when you where did you deploy to in December?
We went to Iraq. So we split up a little bit. So being engineers, our company was tasked with route clearance over there. So we're actually two platoons going into it, and then in typical, you know, Army fashion, but just, you know, kind of circle back to team building and stuff like that. Right about a month before we deployed, they said, "Hey, we're taking a platoon of scouts and putting them with you guys, and you guys need to make a 3rd route clearance platoon." So we ended up splitting my platoon in half, and they gave me a section of scouts, sent one of my squads over with the scout PL to become like a hybrid scout engineer platoon, 2 hybrid platoons there. And of course, we couldn't have done that during NTC. They wanted to jump that on us right before we deployed, which, and I'm not complaining about it. They're awesome guys, and everybody jumped right in. And so we met up in Kuwait and started training, and went on from there. Like I said, we're doing route clearance, which that's just driving around really slow looking for bombs. Unfortunately, we found them. They found us most of the time. And and we were in, like I said, we're in and around Baghdad. So my platoon, we were split up. My platoon was right above Sadr City. But at that point it was the exclusion zone, so nobody's allowed in there. But we were right on the other side of it. It was my platoon, an infantry company, and we had there was a couple other small teams there with us, but it was about a 5-acre lot with just us. This is at the point this is 09-10 going into, this is OIF 09-10, when the drawback's starting. And so we had pretty much a battalion size, what used to be battalion size area, but occupied by a platoon and an infantry company and 1 platoon. So that we were responsible for the route clearance in that area there. And then our other platoons were pieced out around perimeter of Baghdad. And then they ended up moving around a bit as bases closed down. So my platoon closed down. It was called JSS. We closed that down while we were there. Remember dumping out sandbags and doing all that stuff to close it down in preparation for more, more continuing the drawback.
How was the feeling of actually doing, route clearance? The thing that you train to do, right? Like it's kind of like the off season to in season is a lot of how a lot of players kind of describe it. Training is the off season, and then you're in season when you get to go do it. What was that actually like, as far as like you actually being on route clearance and doing the job that you signed up to do?
Well, you said it. That's what it is. I mean, people kind of look at society, I suppose, looks at deployment in a negative tone for obvious reasons. But the way that's the exact words that I've said many, many times. It was like, how was it? Well, it was awesome because I was finally doing what I've trained at that point since, we knew the deal going in 04 as plebes. Like, so since then, this is what we've been training for. So we're finally doing it. It wasn't a whole lot of fun. No, but, but at least this is why we're here, and our era of guys, this is why we signed up. We knew this was in the cards. And, we're, like you said, you spoke it, that, we were finally doing what we had trained so long to do. And all those summer trainings and all those different things where it's like, well, one day when you're deployed, you're going to have to do this. Well, then we were doing it. So we finally, finally got to kind of fulfill that thing you've been waiting on that apprehension you've been waiting on for so long.
Now, Chris, I know a lot of people kind of know your story, but if you feel comfortable, because I got to see you up close at Walter Reed. Right. If you feel comfortable sharing anything about the story and your comeback kid to deadlifting 500 pounds again, it's crazy watching those videos that you still get after it like that. So
yeah, for sure. And please don't hold back. I'm an open book on this thing. I don't say I love talking about it, but I'm very open about it. If it's going to happen to me, I want at least other people to learn from it, or there's no reason to not talk about it in my book. On every aspect of it, good, bad, ugly, the best of times and the worst of times. But yeah, so I got blown up, medical terms, blown up on April 21st, 2010. I got hit by an EFP over in Iraq. That's when what we usually got hit by. An EFP is it's called explosively formed projectile or penetrator. And it's essentially a shaped charge, like a coffee can. I won't go into the details of exactly what EFP is here for you guys. But so yeah, it's like a big molten slug hit me, came through. We'd been hit by him before plenty of times, but this was the first injury. And like I said, it was April 21st, 2010. Driving down, ironically, the only road we hadn't yet been hit on. And it was 10, somewhere between 10 and 11 o'clock at night. We only rolled at night. So, and yeah, all of a sudden it felt like the world was shaking, and felt like you were inside of a snow globe. Really, whole truck was shaking and all that. Then it kind of settled, dust settled, and I remember thinking like, oh, I guess this is what getting blown up feels like. So kind of did a quick pat down, wiggle my fingers, wiggle my toes, everything was there. So okay, I asked my guys. My driver said I'm good. Our interpreter's in the back, he said I'm good. My gunner's up top said I'm good. Called it up just like we normally did. Said, hey, all right, we got a hit. Go ahead and secondary sweeps, do all those things. And like I said, it was night, and we were usually, we're lit up like a Christmas tree when we went out there, because this is exactly what we were looking for. But with the blast like that, it's going to knock out all the lights. So knock out our lights and all the street lights around us. And so then it's pretty dark at that point. And I'm on the radio still talking to Hire, and I feel a tap on my shoulder, and I look over, and kind of through the dark, my driver's, sitting, next to me, and he's holding a hand up pretty close to my face, just enough that I could kind of see it's dark. And I could see it was blood. I said, is that yours or mine? And he goes, I don't know. So we both kind of said, okay, hang on, let's both start. And we both start doing the pat down again. And I don't know whose it was because we were both hit. But I looked down and I saw a tear in my pant. I could kind of see the silhouette of my pant leg torn. And I mentioned the FPs earlier. They don't, it's like a rifle slug. They don't, when they hit things, it's bad. Usually it's like I said, it's going to get hit by a big rifle slug versus an explosion where there's stuff going everywhere and shrapnel and all that. This is a very aimed device. So then I reached down and kind of felt the pant leg and kind of touched my knee, and I could feel flesh and bone down there, and thought, oh, well, okay, well, that's not good. And then my driver caught a little bit in his jaw and his tricep. So got back on the radio, said, hey, we got, send doc up. We got, 2 injured. Called it back to, I say headquarters, but it was the infantry company headquarters we were with. So, we're reporting to multiple different headquarters while we're on patrol. So medic Aaron Toplinsky was a rock star. Came up, got us all patched up. It was tough to get my door was actually kind of blasted shut, because we were in a Max Pro Plus, and I don't know if you've been in one of those, but those doors are about 600 pounds and hydraulically operated, and it blew out the hydraulics. So we kind of I had to lay on my side and kind of press this thing open just enough for Topo to get in. He got in, slapped a tourniquet on me, and got my driver out of there. I was laying there. That's about when I could start feeling the bleeding, when I was laying there. And I did breeze. I breezed over one part of the whole getting blown up part. When at one point, I remember thinking, when everything was shaking, it feels like you're in a snow globe. It kind of knocks wind out of you a little bit. And I remember just thinking, like, I wonder if, I was like, is this what dying feels like? Because all of a sudden everything kind of got dim. And I kind of laugh at it now, but I don't know if you guys ever play Call of Duty, but like when you're playing, and you take a hit and kind of the edge of the screen gets kind of fuzzy. No shit, that's what it looked like, man. That's what happened on my vision. I never played the game till then, but then years later I was playing, I was like, wait a minute, that's pretty accurate. And so then going back there, I remember, feeling the bleeding a little bit, but then, like I said, Topo patched me up really well. And that was the first time it really started to hurt. Like I said, I didn't know I was hurt. Still at that point, hadn't felt any pain. Till they got me in the other truck. Like I said, I kind of had to climb out of the busted door. My guys were beneath me. They grabbed me, kind of put me on their shoulders, carried me over to the our medevac vehicle, was our platoon sergeant's, truck in the back. We had a couple litters in that. Put me on there. Medic started stuffing, trying to stop the bleeding, and I guess it was a lot of blood. So he was stuffing it for a while. That's when I first started feeling the pain, when he was just kind of shoving gauze up in there to try and get it slowed down. And it was funny because at the time they didn't. At the time, you're a competitive guy, you're an athlete, you want to be a leader. So even in that moment, you're trying to be relevant. And I remember laying there being like, trying to get somebody, give me a radio, somebody, trying to do something. and to my guys' credit, they entertained it for a little while. They had it. They were rock stars. They had everything under control. But I remember at some point just thinking to myself, like, man, they don't need me to say anything. Just fucking, I was like, just lay here. Sorry, I don't know if I can cuss on your podcast. But I was like, I could tell they're all sitting there just being like, man, just lay there and shut up. Like, we got this. And they did. So they got me out of there and I medevaced out and all that stuff. But yeah, that was a pretty wild night. It took a while, but then it got me out of there, got me down to Baghdad, and a couple surgeries there, and then the return home recovery piece started after that. But yeah, I can't say enough about those guys that night. They were, you always as a coach, as a leader, as anything, when you're doing training, you're always looking at it in a critical eye, and you're always worried about, like, okay, are we really going to be able to? Is it going to be okay when we do this for real, whether it's a game or whatever? Is our game plan really going to work? But at some point, you kind of just got to trust it. And did that night ever prove that for me? Because I remember having those days in training where you're looking, you're like, I really hope if shit really hits the fan here, we'll be okay. And and were we ever? Like, those guys, like I said, they knocked it out of the park. It was automatic for them. Topo patched me up, and the other guys, did everything else we needed to get us out of there safe.
Yeah, it was. I guess you must have been at Walter Reed by May or June.
It was April 27th. I got back 27th or 28th.
Oh wow, they got you back quick. Yeah, because
it was a week. It was about a week. So 21st, I got hit. I want to say it was the 28th because I remember it being a week. A couple surgeries in Baghdad there, a couple in Balad, a couple in Ramstein or Longstool. No, sorry, Longstool. A couple in Longstool, and then back to Walter Reed on the 28th.
Yeah. What was the extent of the damage on the knee, Chris?
So it hit the piece that hit me. Actually, I thought this might come up, and so this is what they pulled out of me.
Wow.
So it hit me pretty much right in the middle of the knee, and it shattered my kneecap, broke my femur, fibula, split my tibia like vertically, like a piece of wood, split it down the middle, blew out my popliteal artery, and a bunch of other damage around that, but that was the gist of it. I got a little bit in my finger too. That was a cute little cut. But that's the bulk of it there.
Yeah.
And then the big
I remember coming to visit you, and I just had ACL reconstructive surgery, right? I had that in December, and Colonel Polka, you remember Colonel Polka, obviously, dad away from home, right?
Yeah.
He called me because I was on leave. I took medical leave to recover, so I was in Maryland, and he had called me and he was like, Steve, Chris is at Walter Reed, and he gave me a very shorter version of that. And I, got to bring you a home cooked meal, got to bring you some cookies, I got a ticket on the way there for speeding because I was.
Did you really?
Yeah, I was so. I didn't. Well, I didn't really get a ticket. I got pulled over. I was so anxious on seeing you, and I don't know, kind of like seeing a big brother, and your situation. I was like anxious, nervous, and didn't know what to expect. So I was like speeding, and the guy pulls me over, and I give him my cadet military ID, and I tell him, what's going on. He's like, look, man, just don't speed. Go see your brother. And he was he had served, he prior service guy, so super understanding. But I guess I never did tell you that, but I did get pulled over. Yeah. I was going I think I was going 88 and a 65. So I was cruising in the old Pathfinder, but yeah, I'll never forget. Let's see. So it had to have been that next season you were up at West Point again, right?
Yeah, I came up that fall for the Air Force.
Yeah. So you came up that fall, right. And I remember because
just that weekend.
I had some bad tendonitis in my knee from the patella surgery to reconstruct my ACL, and Colonel Polka's had he's had 6 or 7 knee surgeries too, because his knees are done from jumping and everything.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget. We're on the field, and he comes in. I'm like, he's asking me how my knee's doing. I'm like, it's good. He's like, Steve, my knee hurt earlier today, and I got to see Chris, and I just remember thinking, my knee's doing just fine. So, but like you say, you're very open about it, and you want people, if you can help anybody or if anybody can learn anything from your story, and your comeback from that injury to what you're able to do now is incredible, and we'll get into that once we start talking about what you're able to do on the as a football coach for Army football. But definitely a motivating and inspiring person, as a younger guy, seeing you go through that and what you've done, that was my senior year, and I had a little tendonitis in my knee, and I was like, nah, I'm good. I'll be all right.
Yeah. Well, I always thought that was a cool kind of full circle deal where I guess I was one of, I remember meeting you when you were either a recruit or on plebe. I can't remember. I remember from back in high school. But
yeah, we met the first time I remember. Well, as I look back at, after I met you and after I learned you played for Middletown, I went back and looked at film, and I was like, oh yeah, there's Chris there on the field. But I met you in the Kimsey Center upstairs, where and that's where I first met you from Middletown and stuff like that. So that was like the beginning of our relationship, so to speak.
And I always thought that was kind of a cool full circle thing, how that, I was the first guy you met up there, and then you were the first guy from West Point or from Army football, anybody really, to come in outside of my direct family and Stacy to come visit me in the hospital. So that was kind of a cool, I always thought that was a cool kind of full circle thing there.
Absolutely.
Chris, what do you think keeps you motivated through the rehab of suffering something that, that dramatic?
Just being, well, I'm going to say this with a caveat because the beginning of it is 100% not true, was being realistic about it. Because at first it was not, it was, you get hurt just like on the field. You don't want, no, I'm fine. I'm good. Don't worry about it. And I was doing that the whole time. And it didn't hit me until we got back to that our head medic who was back there. I remember he looked down at me and he was like, well, enjoy a cold one back home for us. And I looked at him. I was like, is it that bad? And he said, yeah, it is. You're going home. And that was the worst part for me of the whole thing. Honestly, way worse than any of the pain or anything like that. It was just realizing that my time as a PL was over and I had to leave my guys. And that was just by far the worst thing. So then fast forward to your question, Sal, was one, I was blessed to have a great support network around me. I'm from Maryland, so it's an easy poke for my family and Stacy, who was my wife, girlfriend at the time. So easy poke for them to come down and visit, and family, friends, everybody. I was there with, unfortunately, a few of my classmates and had some other friends there. And we were, mid-20s at our time, when you're kind of, full of piss and vinegar and ready to take on the world. And we kind of took that same attitude into our rehab and our training and everything from there. My mentality for it was always just, okay, this is the situation I'm in. What's next? I'm not going to be in this bed forever. So I need to do something to get out of it. So what's the only thing I can do? And at the time when the answer is 0, okay, when you got to wait till the answer is 1. And then if it's laying there in bed, doing a little bit of rehab when they come in, then you do that 20 minutes of rehab and let them crank on your leg or whatever the next thing is, or whatever the next surgery is, or whatever that is. You take that, and that's the only thing I can focus on, because everything else in my life has been taken away. So I got to do the best at that. And then just you keep pushing that envelope as you're allowed to do more things. I remember laying there with a, you probably buy it at Walmart. I don't know, one of those air compressing multi-gym things that they probably on an infomercial that that you can do pulls and pushes and all sorts of weird stuff with, and laying there in a bed, just trying to move that thing best I could with, using little hand grippers, just doing something to feel productive there. And just kind of that what's next what's next mentality was kind of was where I kind of went with that.
Just you hear a lot of people talk about small victories, right? Because like you said, I mean, as a guy who's attacked everything his entire life, and then you're told, hey, just sit here, relax. We'll come and talk to you in about 2 months before you can start doing stuff. You're just like, okay, well, I got the hospital TV. I'm gonna order the grippies. I'm gonna have the strongest forearms in America in about 2 months. So it's pretty cool that you talk about it as that the athlete does not change, right? The athlete mentality does not change. And that's why you're where you are now, Chris. I mean, you're deadlifting, you're squatting, you're doing everything that you did prior to, and I've seen some pretty heavy lifts from you, and it's incredible, man. And it's like I had Ben Kawika as a coach at prep school, right? Very intense guy, awesome mentor. And he told us some stories about being an Apache helicopter pilot, and it's like the biggest thing that you do for those guys, man. It's like, look, are you really gonna cut a workout short today, right? Or are you not gonna give it your all today? When they see a guy like you in there, it's like, man, the motivation and inspiration is just got to be ridiculous. And all it would take for me is a look from you one time, just to look like, yeah, I saw that rep, and you're just like, God, all right, I got to do it again.
It all just boils back to being I want to say athlete, but that's a little generous term for me. So I'll say meathead, being a meathead, being a competitor, just somebody, who, I think that's kind of just how you have to look at things. I remember, and like I said, being realistic with the whole thing. I remember at one point that one of the doctors came in, and this is a couple of weeks in, maybe, I don't know, 2 weeks in, 3 weeks in, something like that. Doctors, they're very hesitant to give you a prognosis or to really say like, okay, what's the long-term thing here? Because there's so many variables. And because there are so many variables. So at one point, one of the doctors came in and said, well, you probably won't, because they knew I lifted weights and, did all that. And I enjoyed that back then. And he said, well, I'm trying to remember exactly how he said it. I think it was to the effect of, you're always going to walk with a limp, and you'll probably never squat again. I think it was that. It was probably you won't be able to squat again, and you'll always walk with a limp. Paraphrasing, more or less, is what he said. And we had already talked about kind of what the plan was going forward, kind of putting Humpty Dumpty back together here. And I said, well, if everything's there, like you're telling me, we can put these bones back together, we can put a tendon back in there, we can fix these things. Why? I said, if these like, what makes you say that if the parts are there? Like me, my engineering, I majored in engineering here too, so I understand like structures and like how a bridge works and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, you're telling me the support structures are here. Why would I not be able to do this then? And he just and he said, well, and he said, we hope you can. We hope that's the case. But typically, just with the amount of trauma that you've been through, that doesn't, normally doesn't lead to that. And I remember saying, well, sir, respectfully, screw that. I'm going to do this. And so that kind of led to, if I could do it, I would. If it didn't hurt, if it wasn't damaging anything, and I was just, I did try to do it the smartest way I could, and I was asked the doctors, asked the physical therapists, hey, can I do this? Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Try it out. It feels good. Do it. Okay. What's the next? Do something else. Can I do this? Sure. And I was lucky to have, great doctors, like I said, to put Humpty Dumpty back together, and great physical therapists and everybody helping out along the way that, pushed me and allowed me to push with me is, I guess, best way I could do it. Everybody was full steam ahead for, however, we were all ambitious for the recovery process. And that was, I couldn't have done it without the support of all those people.
So, Chris, we mentioned it earlier. You end up back at West Point that fall I'm assuming it's to get looked at, right? Or did you just come up there for a game or what?
Yeah, just came up for the Air Force game. there was the Colonel Jim Wartsky's class of 82. He was down working at Walter Reed while I was there. It was myself, a couple other classmates a couple of classmates, a couple I went to Ranger School with and all that he said, hey, let's all, so we kind of had our own little, there was my buddies that I hung out with down there. We would, go to rehab together, and then we'd go, go to get dinner, and we hung out all the time. And
right.
Anybody with a less worse injury than you had a paper cut. So so to me, I was one of the softest ones there because I still had my leg. So everybody said I had a paper cut. And then if you were below the knee amputee, anybody with an above the knee amputee said you just have a paper cut. That drive and that kind of competitive thing kind of kept it was a good. You got to laugh at it. You got to have a dark sense of humor about the whole thing. Actually, it was my buddy Raul Harpalani. I knew he was on his way there when I was in the hospital. I remember going into a surgery. I had heard he was on his way, that he got blown up and he was on his way. I remember going into a surgery, and I was at that, like I was prepped for it. Like they gave me like the cocktail. I wasn't out yet. I wasn't in the operating room, but I was in the first room that you go in and they just get you ready for it and kind of give you the cocktail to kind of get you ready to go under. I remember getting wheeled out and hearing a voice from the other side of from the screen. And it was Harp. And I was like, Harp, is that you? Chris, is that you? Like, all right, I'll see you later, bro. All right, see you later. And it was, last time I saw him was Ranger School before that. And then, you go through all those, you got to have a kind of a dark humor about it if you're going through, 25 surgeries and all these different things of doing that. So having those guys was huge. But to answer your question, going back that fall was us, the Walter Reed crew of West Pointers that were there. We took a trip up that weekend to see the Air Force game.
Yeah, it was, but I mean, you were what, a prep school coach within the year, right?
So
at least you were up there helping out with the team.
It was the next fall, right?
Yeah.
So during that time, I'm trying to remember, put it in timeline order now. So yeah, that was that Air Force weekend. That following summer, I came back up there to do my rehab. It was Coach Ellerson said, hey, if we can make this work logistically, would you be interested in this to help us out while doing your rehab? I wasn't ready to go back to the Army yet. West Point had at the time, it was called a WTU, Warrior Transition Unit, that put broke guys like me in a kind of a holding company while you were doing your rehab. So he said, you want to come help us out while you're doing that? So I PCS'd up here that next summer and late summer of 11. And so I was assigned to the WTU here, and I would do my rehab and do all that stuff. And then when I was done with that, I would get my treatment and do my rehab with Keller and Arvin, do all those things. Then when I was done with that, I'd come over to the prep school and help out in the afternoon with the team.
Yeah, because I remember we tried to work the whole, like me being a December grad,
Right.
help out with the team, and I got to coach a little bit with you, but ultimately West Point was like, hey, he's still cadet. Like we can't have cadet and cadet candidates,
Right.
even though it was just literally practice, but
yeah, I know. Yeah, that was.
So I got kind of caught up in that mix, and then I honestly didn't want to go back to the football team because they had the new voice and I had kind of a loud voice, so I just kind of wanted to step away, give it to Erzinger and the guys, and so went on to be a team handball champion, instead. But yeah, I remember. I mean, it seemed like I remember seeing you at the Air Force game afterwards, and then I remember that next year, my December grad year, I helped out with the prep school, and you were there. So it was, essentially, you've been there for 11 years now, Chris.
Since then, yeah. So I was there, just like I said, undergoing. Did I have a surgery while I was up there? I don't remember, but it was on doing my rehab, my treatments, and all those different things. Taking a couple trips down to Walter Reed to keep getting stuff checked out. I think I was done with surgeries by then, but I would still go down for the ortho to check up and do all those things. Ended up going through the med board process, and so that took another 6 months or so. So that was about 2 seasons that I was there when I was still active duty. Ended up at the end of the med board process, I'd planned on appealing it and trying to stay in. But after all that, I ended up, deciding to go ahead and not appeal it and get out and then at the time there was a opening at the prep school, and coming out at the time said, "Hey, if you're getting out, can I hire you on as a civilian?" I said, let's look into it. Sure. I'm all about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, we jumped on it and lucked out. And haven't looked back.
Yeah. I'd have to imagine, you've definitely you're probably the most longevity, right?
Up there in terms of the whole
at the prep school.
Yeah. Oh, at the prep school for sure. Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of teachers there that have been there for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm certainly getting up there.
So how exactly has the what's changed from when you first started? Obviously, not including like the whole coaching staff change, but like as far as like what structurally, for football players or athletes specifically, or at the prep school in general, that first year, 2011 was the first year I was up at West Point. So that's all as a coach is been up at the academy. So how has it gotten better? How has it changed over the years?
I'm trying to think which way to attack, because I mean, there's a handful of things that have changed. Obviously, that first year was interesting. I was telling somebody else about that the other day. Only about half the school was finished. So they bus down every morning to West Point to take their classes in I think Cullum Hall or something. And then the teams would go, we didn't have a gym. So the teams would lift weights at the MWR here, and everything, we practiced on a soccer field. And, our locker room was in on a concrete pad in the back with a roof over it. It was very unfinished product that first year. And it's everything's gotten better since then. They finished off the rest of the school that year, and then it's all just one big building now with the classrooms and weight room and basketball court, and they turfed that the bubble out back, so we have a pretty nice setup now. So in terms of, obviously, the facilities have finished, gotten better. We just we actually just got a new football field this year. They just returfed it. Just got a new weight room this year, so everything's been great. Sornex really hooked us up with that. So in terms of that stuff, everything's equipment wise, we've made a lot of progress over the years. Just got a supplement budget, from gift funds, all that stuff. So that's been a huge improvement for us at the prep school locally. That's all locally. On the big scale of things, one of the biggest changes, I think, on the grander West Point scale would be, we've done the summers have way changed since we were here. And at least since I was here, I'm sure that it was similar for you. CCV or CFT Buckner was 8 weeks back then. So you're in the field all fall. Now everything's for certain, for football, everything's front loaded. So they're still doing all that training. They're just getting it out. They're done. They're getting it done now. Versus being there being out in the field all summer. So they're going to finish that up and then go into STAP, get some classes out of the way, and get some classes out of the way to lighten the load in the fall, and then train. They're there all summer. Whereas we used to have a couple weeks off at a time here and there. They don't have that anymore. So that's just one of the bigger things that's changed there.
Yeah, I feel like that's more. I feel like it's more realistic to other football programs, though.
Very much. We were way behind the schedule.
Like I remember, I used to go on leave for like 30 days in the summer sometimes. If I didn't get the MyAd I wanted, or you always had to do your military, your MyAd or whatever, and then you always had PyAd, or you did a STAP, you did a STAP class. I had full summers there.
Right.
But I remember there was a couple years there where I went home for 30 days and I just trained at the house, just like I did in high school. And I always, I'd ask my other buddies who were playing ball at other colleges, like, nah, man, we're here all summer. I was like, wow, all right, well, I'm not. And, but I think that obviously, it's still, I love the fact that we're still getting everything knocked out that's necessary in order to graduate. We're just, it looks a little different, and it helps everybody out. I mean, and Chris, you see it, you got to see it better than anybody. West Point's a great place when Army's winning. It's a much better place to be when Army's winning.
It was yeah, that was kind of a foreign concept compared to when we were here, or when I was here. At least you guys had some success, but yeah, it was. I remember even coming to that first year coaching at Prep, we beat Navy, and I just remember standing on the field crying because that was just a feeling I've never even come close to feeling. And then yeah, luckily everything's only gotten better since then.
Yeah, I guess, Chris. So a lot of people talk about your impact that have gone through the prep school that went up to the big team. John Voight was one of them that was on our podcast talking about your impact and how, I mean, you guys have really stayed close to them. How much of your job, your job is to get them in the weight room, right? Yeah, your job is to teach them X's and O's too, but also how about that relationship building that starts kind of at the prep school and then works that culture, so to speak, that starts at the prep school and works itself up to West Point.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it before. That's the most rewarding part or the other, I guess, most rewarding part about it is seeing them grow up. It's like I had kids before I had kids, but they're not kids. They're like little brothers that are grown up and are grown men now. The wins are, like I said, beating Navy, the wins are great, but probably the most humbling thing is, when they asked me to, I've commissioned a few of them. When they start having kids and they call, stuff like that is, I think that's when we talk about culture, what I believe what really sets us apart as an Army football, regardless of through the decades, is what we do after. And you get at the core of it, while we're here, we're a college football team. There's a lot of those out there. What makes us different, when I think a lot of what makes our brotherhood different and truly makes it that is we're all going in the same direction after, and it's way more important. I guess I don't know if that's the right word, but what you do after carries as much weight or more weight than what you do while you're on the team. How your service in the Army, not just your service, but your reputation of what you do after the playing years is kind of that standard we hold ourselves to. That other teams might meet up at a 5-year reunion, 10-year reunion. We meet up for us, Iraq and Afghanistan. I was running into teammates while I was in Iraq, all on my way there. When I got blown up, Dion Tarver was on brigade headquarters. He took the call. Like I said, Steve's first guy to come visit me in the hospital. And then there's other teammates that have worked at the hospital that I was at, other guys that were in Iraq with me. My old roommate was in Iraq with me, and teammate. And I think that's what really kind of sets our brotherhood apart from others, and what kind of drives our culture is that group. I don't know what the right word for it is there, but what I just said, that we're all going in the same direction. We know the reality of where we're all going.
Yeah, I think, and I just got done going to a couple weddings back to back in May, Chris, and I hadn't seen some of those guys in 7-8 years. Talked to them, but I hadn't actually, physically met up with them. And as soon as I see them, I mean, it's like I just saw them, 2 weeks ago. You know what I mean? I think that's what is the most special thing about the brotherhood is, I haven't seen you in a while, but we're talking like, we're not missing a beat. If I come up to West Point to see you, we're not going to miss a beat. It's just you just pick up right where you left off,
Right.
And it's really unless you have actually experienced it, you can't really describe it to people that don't have this kind of bond, because it's more than a relationship, it's a bond.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just great to, one, we've got someone like you at the prep school. I'm sure the athletes that have come in have changed a little bit since they've been there. You're definitely, there's a reason why you've been there for 11 years, because you're the right guy for the job. And you have a great impact on these young men.
I appreciate it. But, and to Sal, to circle back to your original question there, yeah, that's the rewarding part is that, like, knowing what we've gone through, what I went through with my teammates and where we all went, and that bond is still there with my current players now. And as they get on, as I watch them grow up, get older, commission, get married, have kids, they're, it's in part of the long gray line. And it's not just going off doing your own thing. It's there's a shared history, and just a shared line of what we all do. And that just makes those bonds as a coach that much deeper.
You got that weight room. I mean, we see like Coach Munkin videos of the big team. You got that weight room pretty pumped up and ready to go down at prep, right? Some of the stuff you guys are doing is absolutely incredible. But you see the growth, and you can post a player, what he's squatting or what he's working out, and you see some of the videos that you post. You can see him increasing the weight, and just, I mean, how much? I know that you've been in charge of the weight room for a while there at West Point at Army Prep from the start, right? I mean, what's that environment like for you?
It's awesome. It's so much fun, and I'm spoiled. I'm spoiled because I get a bunch of 17, 18-year-olds, and you could stick them in a weight room and just close the doors, and they're going to get stronger. They're at their prime of their life. For that, but it's a blast seeing them develop over the year, and like I mentioned earlier, when a guy looks at it, finishes a set and stands and goes, "Coach, that used to be my max," and he just did it for 5 or 6. It's cool because you see just kind of it unlocks something in them. Like, I just did something that I didn't know how to do before, or I never envisioned myself doing, and all of a sudden here I am a year later.
You start. Chris, we need to start posting first squat max versus end of year squat max side by side each other.
Well, one of the coolest, I don't really put it out there unless the guys want to. One of the coolest things we do is we do a before and after photo. I used to do that with numbers, but then that's a little skewed, because they're coming out of CCBT, which isn't fair to test them then. And then just,
I like it. I like seeing those numbers, man.
But at the end of the year, what we will do during their summer training is do a kind of a NFL Combine profile picture.
Hell
and
yeah!
Then we'll take one after we test at the end of the year too. So you'll see their before and afters, and a lot of them are pretty cool to watch. See a guy put on 30, 40 pounds throughout a year. It's pretty neat.
That's sweet.
You look at
that's such a funny picture to have too. It's like the Tom Brady photo. You know what I mean?
It is. Well, I got to be careful because if I open my iPad at the wrong spot or around the wrong people, and I just got a bunch of shirtless players on my on my iPad.
Shit.
What a big difference, right? Because even at West Point, from your freshman to sophomore year, that off season in between, you see the growth of players. And I'm sure when you're seeing kids come in, like you say, 17 years old, and they're still kids to a point, but then they kind of leaving like almost like men, right? So
it's crazy to see the difference in that a year does for them, and especially when I told them at the beginning of the year, like the hardest thing I think as a college athlete is consistency. It's we talked about all the hard work and working at the next level, but if you can that'll come. Like that's not going to go right away, but if you can just show up and do the work that you're being asked to do, it's shocking what'll happen if you can handle your other stuff outside of the football team or the weight room, pass your classes, don't get in trouble, show up on time for things. That way it doesn't detract from from your development. It's shocking how much they can develop.
And I think the coolest thing, Chris, is a lot of these guys might have lifted weights in high school or done what do you call it? Done workouts or whatever. But the cool thing is the program, right? And that's why I try to stress to even on active duty, as like when I was a commander, now that I'm in an SFAB team leader, like we don't just work out in the Army, right? Everything is a program. There's a goal. There's something you want to do. Now you could have 3 different goals, right? You want to run a 5 mile in 40 minutes. You want to run a 12-mile ruck in 3 hours, and you want to get a 550 on the ACFT or whatever, right? And then you can create a program that helps you get there. That's the coolest thing about the kids is literally, look, show up, do this sheet, okay? And I promise you, the science is already there. Everything's already good. I know it might not make sense to you why you're doing, 4 sets of 10 or 10, 8, 6, 4, 2 or whatever it is, okay? But trust me, we'll get there and the program works. So it's really that's the coolest thing about, what I always enjoyed about showing up to Army football weight room is, all right, what's on my sheet, baby? That's all I know I'm taking care of. All I got to do is this. And now that I'm older, I get into programming a little bit. I had a battalion commander that was huge into programming. And I got to take some courses and stuff. So I'm doing my own kind of programming, but it's one of my favorite things to show up to the weight room, get my booklet, see what I have to do and know that all the science is already taken out of it. If I do this, I'm good. And then there's always time for arms and abs afterwards.
Yeah. And then it's fun. What's one of the challenges, with being the prep school and just having them for a year is, you don't have that upper class kind of to crack them in line sometimes. So you kind of have to build you have to earn their trust based on really nothing other than just saying, hey, trust me, this is going to work for you. Do this card. But when you see when they start seeing that return on their investment there, when they start seeing, oh, wow, I'm moving a lot more weight than I used to. Oh, that really did work. Then it gets real fun because then they don't stress about, because they're young and every young kid wants to max out every day and do all that. Once they kind of trust the process, they can have fun in other ways. They'll come in, and we had a bunch of guys this year. They'd come, every team lift, they'd come in and they used all the chalk in the weight room, and they would like paint their eyes with chalk, and they would, shirt would be covered in it, and just hooting and hollering, and just having a blast. And it makes your job so easy. It makes my job so easy when they're coming, and all I got to do is talk the technical part and say, all right, let's go to town. First set, ready to go. And they're just attacking it. You just see it's that much more effective, and they have so much more fun doing it. And it's so much more fun to coach. So they make it easy on me.
Well, the success that they're having in the weight room, right, that will help them out when they get to the big team. And also, I mean, you look at a big part of Army's success in Jeff Monken era has been the, I guess, the pipeline from the prep school to the big team, right? There's been so many guys that have been contributors that needed that extra. Steve, right? You went through, you need that extra year to mature or maybe learn the game a little bit better. Right? You hear some guys that don't say, I don't even know how to play. You heard Caleb Campbell saying he didn't even know how to play football really, and you get, I guess you get that experience under your belt from the prep school. And that, Chris, you can't really understate the importance that you and the staff there have had on this success, because I think, like I was going to say, strength and conditioning coaches are kind of the unsung heroes of a program, right? And I think that, you guys at the Army Prep are right there with just have a lot of responsibility of what the success that's happened at West Point.
I appreciate that. Yeah, we, taking my cues from Coach Hughes. He's got a great program going there, and I'm just trying to emulate that best I can down there. And like I said, we got the kids make it easy. They're so fun to coach, and they're so into training. It's not, you're not twisting kids' arms to get them in the weight room. It's the best part of their day. So it's our job is easy when we get that.
Spent many hours in the prep school weight room, that's for sure. It was one of my favorite places because it wasn't anywhere else around military. I could just be in, we used to make the deep V's, right? Our personal deep V's. We used to rip our shirts to have our V-necks like shredded all the way down to like our top ab. So I firmly believe I love the personality that comes out in the weight room, and whatever, you get after it 1,000 different ways, but you get after it, and that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Chris, it's been great to have you on and sharing your stories. We really appreciate it. Before we end this podcast, maybe you're wearing a Legacy Alive shirt. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that and your role with it. And I know that, being through, right, what you've been through in the military, and maybe that kind of helps in a way with Legacies Alive.
Sure. Legacies Alive is a nonprofit that I work for. I'm treasurer for them. Co-founded by Army football brothers, Mike Beatty, Mark Feldowski, after Mike did his walk around the country. And, we support Gold Star families, remembering our fallen soldiers, keep their legacies alive. That's our goal, in whatever form that may be. We do different challenges and different things throughout the year. We sponsor different events, bringing Gold Star families together, helping them through that process of losing someone, and keeping that community, attempting to keep that community in a group that, I think, this is just me personally, just often, we lose somebody in combat, or we lose somebody, we do all the things then, but what comes later, that for all those families, those that service member is still gone, so it doesn't go away for them. And I got to come home, not everybody else. I got to come home to my mom, my dad, my wife. Not everybody else did. So that's kind of what the void we're trying to fill there, and trying to help out and help that community along.
No doubt. And the support, I remember when Mike did his walk, and I remember talking to Mike. Greg Washington is another guy, a former Army player that's done a lot of that stuff to try to raise awareness. And just the support, I don't think you can underestimate the support what that can do, the power of what that can do for a family, just to know that, hey, they have somebody to talk to, right? They have somebody that'll be there for them. Steve, almost like what you talk about with the Army Football Brotherhood, right? There's always a text or a phone call away, even the old grads, even the guys who are starting to play right now for Army. So
it was a really, really cool experience. I got to talk my chain of command into, when I was at Fort Stewart, I got to talk them into, hey, we're going to do a 12-miler, and we're going to do 12 miles from when Mike Vidi's 12 miles from Tybee Island hitting the ocean. And it ended up being I think the risk assessment ended up being like up to the brigade commander, because we were doing like a ruck, like next to a highway, and then my first sergeant said he'd join in, so that like limited it a little bit. But it was just going to be a PL and like his 40 dudes. Jordan Mike on the last 12 miles of his stretch before he touches the East Coast. So that was a really cool experience. Got to talk to Mike for a while on that. Got to talk to Mark, which was really cool. But I think the biggest thing, unfortunately, you stay in the Army long enough, you're going to lose someone close to you, and you're going to feel what the family goes through, really close. But I think what I've learned through my experience with my brothers that I've lost is literally keeping their legacy alive, talking to those families, sharing stories that they may have never heard. Maybe they never even wanted to hear them, but it's keeping them alive in the spirit of their family, and knowing that they're not the only ones that are thinking about their fallen soldier, their loved one every day. And I think that's one of the most important things, is just, the name says it all. And that's what we try to do is, just, we talk to the families, the survivors, the Gold Star families. I text, spouses or moms randomly, and just be like, hey, get this. I just thought of this. And, we chat for a couple minutes here and there, and it's our little, I don't know, it's our little relationship that we have over something that, unfortunately just, is tragic, but we're keeping them alive, and it's an awesome nonprofit. I think that's cool that you're doing that, Chris, and love that you're getting to do it with a couple Army football players as well.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I've only been on for about a little over 2 years now. But when they asked me to join the team, it was a no-brainer. It's my best friends, Colin Mooney, Mark Fadowski, Mike Vidi, Matt Hernandez, all those guys that that we played with, that have built such. And I'm, like I said, coming into it relatively new. They've been doing it since 2014, and the community that they've built of Gold Star families is just, it's humbling and awe-inspiring. Just the closeness and the share, just the love that they've built within that community that they've done. So yeah, it's an honor to be a part of it. I'm glad, they asked me to help out. So just trying to do my part in helping out.
I'm so glad we got an opportunity to talk about that, Steve, because that's not a topic that we really gotten on this podcast, and we're closing in on close to 100 episodes here. So I'm so glad that we were able to talk about the legacies alive. And Chris, like I said before, we really appreciate having you on, taking all the time you have, and your impact on, like we said, on Army football it can't be measured, and we really appreciate just all your insight and what you've done for first off what you've done for our country and what you continue to do for Army football.
I appreciate you guys having me. Thank you for doing what you do, and it's awesome to listen to you guys every week or so, and just hear old voices you haven't heard in so long, and just it goes back to the culture and like the shared path that we're talking about earlier. Just to hear you guys weekly talk to these guys that just kind of continue keeping what we do relevant and talked about, and that's what makes it special. That's what we all signed up for, so we're all here for. So yeah, thank you guys for doing this.
Appreciate it, Chris, and maybe I'll see you at the golf outing this year.
Definitely, I'll be here, brother.
Right. See you later, brother.
Right. Be Navy, guys.
Beat them.